And Senator Liz Krueger is here joining us from New York City. Thank you very much, Senator, for being with us.
Certainly.
So yesterday we spoke with Senator Libous, Tom Libous from Binghamton. He is heading up the Senate Republicans' effort to win back the majority, which of course your party now has. And I just want you to take a listen, if you wouldn't mind, to something that he said and respond to it.
Certainly.
He wants to do what his party has not. You know, I've said this to people. Andrew Cuomo agrees with me that the Senate Democrats need to go because Andrew Cuomo wants to cut taxes, he wants to put a property tax cap, and many of the Senate Democrats continue to increase spending and increase
But he said
taxes.
over the weekend that he thought that it was important to keep the Democrats in power.
Well, of course he's going to say that he's a Democrat. So.
Okay, so that's a little bit of a circuitous argument, nevertheless kind of an interesting one, and it strikes at a very interesting point. Andrew Cuomo is the Democratic frontrunner for governor, and he has this platform that is actually very fiscally conservative and doesn't make everyone who's traditionally a Democratic ally, particularly the unions, happy. What do you say about Senator Libous's comments?
Well, to start with, the Senate Democrats have brought several tax cap bills to the floor, and the Democrats have passed those bills. And as I recall, a number of Republican senators haven't voted for the tax cap bills. So we're not in a different place than Andrew Cuomo on that. And if you look at the history of raising taxes in New York State, it was the Republican-controlled Senate for 43 years that voted all those tax increases through. So I know Tom Libous loves to point his finger at Democrats, but I don't really think we have a lot of explaining to do on these issues.
Well, the thing, though, about Andrew Cuomo, is that he has not actually become very actively involved with the Senate Democrats' effort to keep the majority. In fact, over the weekend when he said, and the direct quote was, "I support a Democratic majority in the Senate, and I think what's most important is a functional state Senate," and we'll get into that in a second, but that's the first I had heard of him saying anything about the Senate Democrats maintaining the majority. He has not endorsed anyone, and he hasn't helped you guys raise money. What do you expect him to be more active?
Yes, I do expect Andrew Cuomo to be more active. We have been having meetings with the state party, as you've just pointed out. He said he supports the Senate remaining in control of the Democrats. We are actually very, very confident that a unified ticket will move us forward in November. And despite my friend Tom Libous's statement that the Republicans are on the rise, I am very confident that there will be more Democratic senators coming to Albany in January 2011.
Well, but, okay, so you've been speaking to Andrew Cuomo. Does that mean he's going to be raising money for you? Will he be campaigning for you? Because, at this time in 2008, during the fight, David Patterson, who is actually a former Senate minority leader, of course, had pledged to raise more than $2 million. And then also we had seen Eliot Spitzer get very actively involved. He came a little shy of helping the Democrats take the majority. They didn't do it until 2008. But how active will Andrew Cuomo be?
You will have to ask Andrew Cuomo. Our discussions have been with the state party, and there has been a great commitment by Jay Jacobs and the Democratic Party for a unified effort, and they are helping the Senate Democrats. And to be honest, I think that such a strong ticket with Andrew Cuomo at the top versus Carl Palladino at the top of the Republican ticket will send a clear message to New Yorkers where they should be putting their votes in November.
When you talk about a unified ticket, however, you haven't seen the standard bearer, Andrew Cuomo, endorse either the state comptroller, Tom DiNapoli, or Senator Eric Schneiderman, who is the nominee now, won that five-way primary for Attorney General. I mean, do you think Andrew Cuomo should endorse these guys, and when might that happen?
Well, I certainly don't speak for Andrew Cuomo or the state party, so I can't answer. You need to ask him. I am sure that he will be there with the Democrats across the board, good progressive Democrats come the November election.
Now, the Democrats actually, of course, you have a leg up in fundraising because the majority helps you do that. And you have the enrollment edge, which is very helpful to you, 5-3 about statewide. But you had some setbacks on Long Island. You lost two candidates, one to a residency challenge and the other to a stalking and menacing charge. He had to end his campaign, Dave Mejias. Do you think, how far back did that set you in your efforts? Because both of these guys, actually a woman, Regina Calcaterra, and then Dave Mejias, were premier candidates for you.
It's true, those were setbacks, but we in fact have two strong women running in both of those seats. And again, this year we have 12 women running for the New York State Senate. So I also think a significant advantage for us is how many women are running against incumbents, and how the messaging from voters is they want to see women in office. They have more faith and trust in women to be determining the decisions in their lives and their families' lives. And so I can't tell you enough how optimistic I am about our chances across state in all directions in November.
You know, it's interesting you bring up this issue of women, and also you had just mentioned Carl Palladino. We have been seeing a lot of pressure from various different Democratic Senate candidates, particularly when it comes to the women. For example, I'm thinking of Dee Dee Barrett, who sent out a letter. I believe she's challenging Steve Saland,
yes,
a Republican
right.
incumbent. She said you need to disavow Carl Palladino. Now, you've seen a lot of the Senate Republicans, Tom Libous, who was sitting with me last night, and also Minority Leader Dean Skelos, embrace Carl Palladino. How much is it going to be a factor in the campaigns of the Senate Democratic challengers, particularly the women?
Well, I actually feel like our secret weapon in November to make sure that Democrats win and that more of our Democratic women candidates win has one name, and that name is Carl Palladino. It's almost like I couldn't ask for a better opponent to be the head of the Republican ticket in November. You know this, Liz. This man is scary. This man has been rejected by any number of respectable Republicans throughout the state. He makes misogynist statements. He sends out pornographic emails. He makes racist and bigoted statements. How can elected officials of either party stand there and embrace Carl Palladino? How can they embrace Greg Ball, their candidate against Michael Kaplowitz, a fine Democrat in northern Westchester County, when Greg Ball's own history of threatening women not only is well known? Tom Libous and the Senate Republicans spent over $100,000 trying to beat Greg Ball in the primary, telling the voters about him.
Okay, but Senator, I mean, and I'm not so sure necessarily that I know that I would agree with all of your characterizations of Palladino. However, he is obviously very controversial, and he has said some statements that people consider very offensive, a lot of people. Here's the problem. Something he has done has tapped into the electorate. The electorate seems to prefer angry over moderate at this moment. So how do you convince an angry, divided, upset electorate, particularly voters upstate, that your message of moderation and maturity is the right message?
Well, thank you for your father's data that you shared with the public, that only 2.5% of the electorate of New York State said they wanted Carl Palladino during the September primary. So again, I don't really think that's much of a mandate. And so yes, are 2.5% of the New York State electorate mad enough that they will jump on a candidate who seems to message some of the Tea Party rhetoric against any and all government? But again, is he offering solutions for the state of New York? Is he telling us how he's going to solve our economic problems, how he's going to get New Yorkers back to work? No, he's talking about cutting fundamental government services. He's talking about telling New Yorkers, I'll cut health care if I become the governor. I'll cut education. I'll leave your children with no place to go after school. And perhaps hospitals won't be open in your districts anymore. I'm not really sure when New Yorkers, more than the 2.5% who voted for him, take a look at what Mr. Palladino's platform for the future is in New York, that he's going to get much more of a mandate than he got in September.
Yeah, I believe my father called him the mouse that roared. So, but we'll see.
Thank
I mean,
you again to your father, a very fine man.
The Rasmussen, he's a Republican. The Rasmussen poll, though, has Carl Palladino ahead by 16 points. But before, I have to ask you this question also, just to change tacks for a second, because I did put Senator Libous on the spot about this. If the Democrats retain the majority, do you believe that John Sampson will stay the leader? Because he actually backed a number of people that rank and file, including yourself, did not, and most notably Pedro Espada, who lost significantly in the primary.
Well, I'm delighted, of course, that Pedro Espada lost significantly. I was very actively involved in the campaign of Gustavo Rivera, a fine young man who will be an extraordinary representative for the people of his district. The people saw that. They rejected the corruption of Pedro Espada. I believe you will see incumbents all over the state losing their elections because people are mad. They've had it with incumbents who delivered poorly for them. And that's why I am so confident that we have a great slate of Democratic candidates running who are going to be winning and joining us in the Senate. Now, it's too early to have a crystal ball on the question of leadership next year. For example, we had created a fake majority leader title basically when the Republicans voted Pedro Espada in as their majority leader in a coup. We then took all the power away from the title, and he was appointed, not voted in by the Democrats, appointed majority leader in the Democratic conference, a situation that I always objected to. I think that we will have a complete reevaluation of how we should have leadership for the Senate Democrats when we do continue our majority with a greater number in January.
Well, because, at least one person is calling, who actually worked for Pedro Espada, is now calling for Senator Diaz to be the majority leader because of a lack of Latino leadership at the state level.
Well, we are being joined by any number of additional terrific senators, including 2 new Latino senators. Both Adriano Espaillat will win his election in November and become a new senator, although he's been an assembly member. Gustavo Rivera will be sworn in as a new senator. I am all for expanded, diverse leadership. The Democratic Party and conference is representative of the diversity of the state of New York, minus, in fact, enough women, since we are 51% of the electorate and only 16% of the Senate. But I am open to many new people being considered for important roles in the Senate. I have to say I probably wouldn't rush to endorse Senator Diaz to be leadership in my conference. I think you and I know that he and I differ greatly on many important issues.
Yes, that is no surprise for me to hear you say that. I just want to, in parting, note, and you did a lovely segue there, thank you very much, that the 16% of women in the Senate is actually now the title of a new blog that you have to highlight the women candidates. It's called 16 and Rising, I believe. 16andrising.com. Everybody should go to their computer and take a look. Again, we have 12 amazing women running for the Senate for the first time, and of course our 8 Democratic incumbent women, but our goal is to see a significant number of additional women win their elections this November. And the motto is, when women vote, women win, and we need to make sure that women get out there to the polls and that they hear about the women candidates and that their families, not just women, men and women, understand why it does make a difference in their lives to have more progressive women representing them. After all, we're 51% of the population. Shouldn't we have reasonable representation at the tables of power? It sounds logical, but I'm neither going to endorse nor oppose anything that has anything to do with anything other than women should be in positions of prominence. Thank you very much.
Well, the Republicans have one woman running also. Of course, I can't hope that she wins. But again, I urge everybody to take a look. 16 and Rising. We have a really diverse group of women from throughout the state of New York. You mentioned Dee Dee Barrett running against Stephen Salan. Take a look at Joanne Yepsen against Roy McDonald, Susan Savage against Hugh Farley. It's just such terrific women.
Well, I want to thank you, Senator, and also, of course, in parting, this probably having all these legislative women running makes up for the fact that there's only one woman running statewide on the Democratic ticket, and I do not believe any on the Republican side. So
that is correct. I'm very, very confident that Kirsten Gillibrand will be our officially elected U.S. state senator when the November election's complete.
Well, Liz Krueger, thank you very much for joining us this evening from New York City.
Thank you. Thank you.